Hello and welcome to this module where we will focus on unpacking the meaning of privilege and how it relates to concepts of power, oppression, and social justice. Oftentimes, power and privilege are seen and understood as one and the same and used synonymously. However, while they may be interrelated, they are still different, distinct concepts. We discussed power in detail in the previous lecture, and it would be interesting to now see what privilege means. Let's start at the very beginning. Privilege refers to the often inherent and sometimes unintentional access to resources, opportunities, and entitlement that result in advantages for certain social groups and disadvantages for other social groups. If you remember, we discussed social groups in the last video. Privilege is characteristically invisible to people who have it. People in dominant groups often believe that they have earned the privileges they have, or that everyone could have access to these privileges if only they worked towards earning them. However, privileges are unearned and granted to people in dominant groups whether they want these privileges or not, regardless of their stated intent, and are not necessarily earned as per popular belief. Unlike targets of oppression, people in dominant groups are frequently unaware that they even have a certain privilege and that they are, in fact, members of the dominant group. Generally, privilege within groups is most visible when they are juxtaposed against those who do not have the same privilege. For example, being a Hindu by itself may not signal privilege unless juxtaposed against the experiences of religious minorities in India. Similarly, belonging to an oppressor caste group in India may not itself signal privilege, but when juxtaposed against those from oppressed caste groups who are routinely excluded and marginalized, these differences start to emerge and become more and more apparent. According to the feminist anti racism activist Peggy McIntosh, privileges exist when one group has something of value that is denied to others simply because of the groups that they belong to, rather than because of anything that they've done or failed to do. Access to privilege doesn't determine one's outcomes. Still, it is an asset that makes it more likely that whatever talent, ability, and aspirations a person with privilege has will result in something positive for them. Thinking about privilege and naming it can often be an uncomfortable exercise for some of us, as this realization often means that we also belong to oppressor groups. However, acknowledging this privilege and how it influences the realities of our lives and those of everyone around us gives us a good opportunity to explore avenues by which we can use our privilege and the resultant power for good and to advocate for social justice and equity. Now that we have spent some time unpacking what privilege means, I want you to take a minute and reflect on the privileges that you think you have. This privilege can be a result of your race, your economic status, your religion, or any other circumstance that has shaped your life. The reason we are discussing privilege here is because its existence or non existence can directly correlate to how much power you may have in a particular situation. The more privileged a person or a group is, the more power they have over the others who do not have the same privileges as them. Try and map out what kind of power you have been able to exercise as a result of your own privileges in your life. Have you been able to assert your freedom a little bit more strongly than others? Have you been able to exert your power over other individuals and groups who do not share the same privileges as you? For instance, individuals from dominant religious backgrounds in a particular country are likely to assert power over those who come from minority religions within the same country. This exercise of power can be covert or overt. Covert power is hidden, it takes place in subtle forms. It can look like a slow but steady erosion of alternative places of worship and reinforcement of dominant religions as virtuous through subtle media messaging, whereas overt power is more explicit, can look like forced religious conversions, public demolition of alternative places of worship, and more. It is important to understand that power and privilege don't exist in a vacuum, and their impact may change with society and with time. Power and privilege can be extremely dynamic and change as the identities and positions of people transform over time. It is important that we are able to understand these different intersections and apply them to all of our work, including social change work. We hope you enjoyed this video and we will see you in the next lecture where we discuss oppression.